Hello.
Hello.
He sat down.
I did.
We're back with the Sonata Chronicles vlog, episode 21.
Our Christmas special.
Christmas special.
I wish it had been 25. We should have started 4 weeks earlier, so it could have been the 25th episode. That's a Christmas special.
That would have been cool.
It would have.
We could call it our Kwanzaa special. Is that?
But now it's just the end of the world special.
End of the world special. That's what I like. That one.
Yeah,
I like that one a lot more.
The Armageddon special.
That's right. So watch this before Friday,
before we all burn to death.
Because I'm gonna be.
There will be no Broncos dynasty.
That's sad for you.
It is.
I'm gonna sit on the top of my roof, and I'm gonna watch Denver burn. Because we're in Denver.
Yes.
So, but we're gonna talk about. Well, we went this Friday. We went and saw The Hobbit in high frame rates, 3D, which is HRF 3D. It's
HFR.
HFR 3D. I can't.
Yes.
I don't know what those mean. So we went and saw that, and so we're not going to talk about The Hobbit at all. But I think we're going to talk about the frame rate 3D, the newest version of 3D that is released, the new technology. So you want to give us a little info on what that means? And
so frame rate is how many frames you see in a second. And moving pictures is really an illusion. You have a certain number of still pictures played to you in a second, with a moment of black in between them. And what this does is create motion. First moving pictures were actually developed by, I think it was the Egyptians, where you had the pictures inside the wheel with the little windows. And if you spun it, and you were looking from the top in, it was just a blur of images. But when you came down and they were broken up with intermittent blank spots, the pictures started to look as if they moved. Film and television and video work the same way, in slightly different ways, but it's important to know. So standard frame rate for theatrical release up until this movie was 24 frames per second. Every frame was a 48th of a second. So you had a 48th of a second with a picture, 48th of a second black, 48th of a second with a picture, 48th of a second black. Okay?
it's a lot of frame rate. That's a lot of frames per second, and your eyes do process that. It's amazing.
Now, The Hobbit was shot and intended to be projected at 48 frames per second, which means you're seeing 96 frames in a second. And so you see every frame in a 96th of a second. So you have a picture for a 96th of a second, then black, then a picture. Now, high frame rates people have done in production a lot, actually, but usually they get shown back at 24 frames.
They get broken back down, and
right.
It extends the time, right?
Well, if you keep all the frames in, then you create slow motion. Because if you shoot a second at 48 frames and then you play it back at 24, it's 2 seconds of footage. If you convert it back to 24 frames and you just pull the pictures out, it'll play at real time, but when people did that, it was done for the sole purpose of getting better image in fast-moving objects. The biggest example of this would be Days of Thunder, where they sped up the camera speed and then played it back 24 frames so that the cars on the track weren't just big blurs of color coming by. You could actually see the cars in the race.
Right.
But it's projected at 24 frames, so it still looks like film. Whereas The Hobbit is projected at 48 frames. And so shot in 48 and projected in 48. If you see a 48 frame rate screening, which I don't know, which we did. I don't know if you did. You have to check at what screening you went to.
The probably the cheapest ticket price, the standard showing that was in 2D, was probably most likely in the standard frame rate, which would be 24 frames per second.
Right. Versus
the higher up, and certain screens had the new projectors for the 48 frames per second. So I know that in Denver we had, I think, like 3 or maybe 4 total theaters that had one screen with that projector.
Well, Regal had 2.
I think United Artists had 1.
I thought AMC had some too, I think. Maybe.
I was just thinking
Not
of
sure.
area.
I don't go to AMC.
Yeah.
Dirty AMC.
Okay. But we did go see it in the high frame rate, so...
Man Theaters, peeps.
I remember Man Theaters. I used to work at not Man Theaters, but I remember it. So the high frame rate, it is in select theaters for that particular projection because it is the newer technology. So the theater would actually have to buy a brand new projector, which would run a very large amount of money. And so they would charge a little bit more for the ticket prices. In our particular area, it was an additional, I believe, $4, maybe $4.50 for the 3D experience for the high frame rate, which isn't terrible. And that's kind of what you're going to get with newer technology. It's going to cost a little bit more. Think about the iPhone. The new one's like $700 if you buy it right out of the package and not with a contract, but it's because it's brand new. And they need to pay for the reason of having the new technology. They make sure it's going to be workable. So maybe in the future, if everything converts to 48 frames a second, it may actually bring down the price. The 3D experience will, if they have a 48 frames per second projector and a 24 frames per second projector both doing 3D, you'll probably see a difference in price there as well.